I've reached a point where the majority of what I listen to now is just video game music. I listen to morning Nintendo playlists when I wake up, the Ghost of Tsushima soundtrack whenever I'm at the gym, and Nier Automata when I want to speak to God himself. If we're talking about modern video game music, then we are living in an era of pure, unfiltered sonic freedom today. Composers have access to literally thousands of plugins, sound libraries, orchestral mock-ups, modular synths, MIDI controllers, and even AI that will literally just generate full arrangements for them. They don't even have to do anything. But there's a specific magic that gets lost in all of this infinity and endless amounts of possibilities. Because when we have everything at our fingertips, it's easy to forget that some of the most iconic melodies in video game history were spawned inside of a cage. I am a massive fan for retro video game soundtracks. Even if I don't have nostalgia or didn't grow up with the game, I'll still very much so enjoy the soundtrack. They're crunchy and like imperfect, and they just tingle my earlobes just like my wife's tongue at 3 a.m. What do you think about that?
What the?
I love these songs so much to the point where my biggest flex in this life is that David Wise follows me back on Twitter. And I have no idea why, because I post stupid stuff like this. I don't know why he follows me. I've been listening to retro video game soundtracks for all of my life, but only recently have I discovered and understood how they were made. And I'm not exaggerating this for like YouTube hyperbole. Genuinely understanding how some of our favorite video game soundtracks were created back in the day has changed my perspective on creativity and art as a whole, dude. And I'm hoping that by the end of this yap session, I can maybe convince you to also geek out about this, because it's insane. Because it's one thing to listen to the Secret of Mana soundtrack, but to understand how this was made and with what hardware. It's just, dude, it's too much. It's too much. I'm packing it up. For this video, I want to focus and prioritize the SNES soundtracks, or for us intellectuals, the SNES. This console to me is the perfect example of hardware limitations that were just tight enough to force creativity, but still flexible enough to allow like balding dudes to create the most amazing works of art. And you know, I've been so in the weeds these past few weeks with the SNES soundtracks that I've literally been making SNES beats on my computer.
Hey, Isaac.
Yeah, what's up?
I require sustenance.
Okay, well, I'm in the middle of cooking up some super fire SNES beats right now, so I can't make you anything.
Well, I'm watching Jeopardy, and I don't have time either.
Okay. Big thank you to Uber Eats for sponsoring today's video and keeping the CRTs on. Are you tired of driving everywhere to get your sustenance? Well, say no more, my friends. Because now you can order from the convenience of your own home.
Wait, really?
That's right.
But I thought that was only 1 or 2 restaurants.
How about 100 restaurants? I've genuinely used Uber Eats several times before. A lot of you guys know that I commentate and work from home a lot. And on these days where I am commentating in esports, I literally cannot go out and get food. So if I don't have anything planned, I'll just order Uber Eats, and it's just super easy. You can discover new deals every single day and explore hundreds of different restaurants if you just scan this QR code and use code Isaac15 at the checkout to get $15 off your first order with a minimum basket size of $20. Thank you so much, and back to the video. To truly understand what makes these soundtracks so incredible, we have to first like zoom out and take a look at the hardware that made them barely possible in the first place. Unlike the other other models that Nintendo released, the Super Nintendo did not just tack on a sound chip and call it a day. This thing had an entirely separate audio system, almost like this mini workstation built into the console on the side of the motherboard. It was like a dedicated space for the music. And the most absurd part to me about this whole audio hardware on the motherboard is that it was designed by Sony. Yes, that Sony. More specifically, an engineer named Ken Kutaragi, who was somebody that worked with Sony, but then went behind his employer's back to basically make these chips then for Nintendo. He was like almost like a secret agent. And then this same dude would then go on to lead the entire development of the PlayStation. What was going on in the 90s? Now, at first, this seems amazing and like a killer duo to create some soundtracks, but then the reality of 1990 sets in. This entire powerhouse of audio had to operate on 64 kilobytes of RAM. To put that into perspective, 1 single second of uncompressed CD quality audio was about 176 kilobytes big. That means that the entire audio memory of the Super Nintendo couldn't even hold 1 single second of modern CD quality audio. This 90s console was also 100% sample based. This means that audio composers could quite literally put their own instruments and noises and sound effects that they recorded themselves into the system. This is why the SNES sounds a little bit different compared to so many other consoles from this time, because the audio samples were genuine and real. But remember, you only had 64 kilobytes of RAM to shove stuff in here, even if you had your own sounds. And to top it all off, they only had 8 different channels of audio. So if you want to use a kick, a hi-hat, a snare, and like a leading melody, there goes literally half of all of your audio channels that you can use. Every single decision with the audio carried so much weight. And not only that, but these dudes were working in like tracker-based systems and a software. I don't even know. This is like a dinosaur interface. I don't even know what I'm looking at here. It was crazy to top it all off with this is what you're looking at to like enter in your snare. You're literally programming in the sounds. And with all of these restrictions, dude, you might as well like just give up. There's no way that you could make any soundtrack sound good. These guys weren't forced to just think outside of the box. They had to like live outside of the box, okay? They were forced to extend their creativity to the absolute limits. And as a result, you had dudes literally sleeping in the office so that they had enough time to work on the soundtrack and get it to sound exactly how they wanted. Others were recording individual waveforms and placing and programming them in one by one for weeks just to get one sound the way that they wanted. There were even composers who engineered their own sample loading systems that somehow worked in tandem with the ROM cartridge itself to like swap back spots of memory. And I don't even know how they did it, but they're making brand new systems to create these soundtracks. They were pushed to the limits and had to be creative if they wanted to create anything that had any amount of substance to it. And after understanding all of this, I now look at my own work and all of the art that I've made, and I just realize I'm lazy as f***. There are almost no restrictions now on our creativity in modern times. Dude, our smartphones have 1,000,000 times more computing power than a Super Nintendo. And yet when I sit down to make literally anything, most of the time it just sounds like this. What I've discovered with my current ADHD hyperfixation on Super Nintendo audio and soundtracks is that creativity and the art of making literally anything must have strict enforced boundaries and barriers on it if you want to make something special. Even the composers agree that these limitations are like the secret Krabby Patty formula. The composer of Chrono Trigger, Yasunori Mitsuda, directly stated in an interview that the limited sounds available meant that you could focus more on melody, and I loved that. On hardware today, there are more ways than before for a song to be good or bad, and for the faults or strengths of the composer to emerge. In an age where you could literally tell a robot to make whatever it is you want, restrictions and limitations have been revealed now to be the true puppeteers of creativity. Instant gratification has become the new norm, and what I'm realizing as we continue down this path of technological advancement is that for anybody who wants to create anything, whether that's music or crochet or literally, I think all of us are artists and like to create something, even if it's software. I don't know what it is you want to make, but in order to do so now, especially as this era of technology is getting more and more instantly gratifying, we have to build some wall of Chinas around ourselves. I was brought up with the understanding that freedom is what creates beautiful art, but what these SNES soundtrack composers have taught me is that it's literally the opposite. Real growth artistically happens when you remove options and force yourself to think of a way out. When I'm making things or even editing these videos, I always think I need to buy something else or buy a new plugin or literally just spend money. It's like this weird voice in the back of my head that's telling me my life and my art would be easier and better if I spent money on equipment and increasing my amount of options. But I'd be willing to bet that 99% of the time there is a creative solution to whatever problem that you're currently facing, and that outcome or product will be way better than if you bought something else that made your life easier. These dudes had 64 kilobytes of RAM and made genuine, like, peak human art. Meanwhile, we have supercomputers in our pockets and we're making stuff like this.
He's lining up for something big. The coping. Oh,
clearly, creativity does not need more freedom. It simply just needs a ceiling. And David Wise, if you're watching this, please don't unfollow me on Twitter. I promise you the content will get way better. Just stick with me.
Violent, that's what we show, not private. Better keep to yourself, stay silent. If it come to the wealth, get violent. Start riots, violent. This why my money, my outlet. Only show my colors on outfit.